Hi, everybody. Linda and Charlie Bloomer here with you for our Facebook Live at 12:30 on Thursdays. And the topic that we are exploring today is relationships have inevitable difficulties, but they are survivable. And not only are they survivable, but you can learn a lot about yourself, and you can learn a lot about your partner, and you can learn a lot about how relationships work at an optimal level and how to bring more joy and happiness and peace and harmony into your life out of the difficulties. So I know we want to avoid them at all costs, but when we hit those rough places, we at least want to use them to become better at relationships. And I want to admit that when I was first in partnership with Charlie, I thought the relationship was just going to get better and better and better and better, because I was a romantic back then, and I thought
not anymore.
That I've been stripped of my romantic illusions, and I still consider myself a romantic, but grounded in reality. So I'm still crazy about him. I'm still falling in love with him all the time, but I got my feet on the ground. So one of the things that I learned is that relationships go through phases. And sometimes it's not spring and summer and, joy and light. Sometimes it's challenge time. And the differences can make the challenge, not being able to handle them. The accumulation of the incompletions can clog up the channel. Also, neglect can make a challenging relationship where people are just feeling like, is this all there is? I really thought there was going to be more aliveness and excitement and passion in the relationship. But if the relationship is suffering from neglect, that can be one of the things that happens. You veered off the road because you're paying too much attention to the kids or the careers or your spiritual practice or your political volunteering or whatever it is that you were doing, and that you didn't take good care of the relationship so that it went into a decline. But I'm here to testify. We've gone down in the slumps and we've come up, and we've gone down in the slumps and we've come up. So we're very experienced, Charlie and I, about how to pull out of the difficulties. That's why we can speak with so much conviction out of our own experience, that not only are they survivable, but you can be even better off on the other side of them. And it isn't just from our own experience. It's also because we did this anecdotal study of these really happy couples where we interviewed 50 of them, and they told us in their own words, all of them had had a place where they had gone into decline, maybe a number of places where the relationship had gone into decline, and how they did the good repair work so that the relationship ended up even better after the decline.
My turn.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, also, I want to welcome you to another of our series of Bloomwork Talks. And I also want to just let you know that in case you haven't noticed, we have had some technical problems that had caused us to get started late today. And we also had the same issue last week. Mm-hmm. So if you missed some or all of either one of these talks, this one or last week, please know that you can go to the archives and you can see either one of those in its entirety. And you can also see any one of the previous 19 that we've done over the last few months. So, ordeals. That word kind of has associations with painful, difficult experiences. In fact,
we've had a few.
Yeah, especially you. As a matter of fact, that's how the dictionary defines ordeals. It defines it as a painful or difficult experience, and that tests you. And I believe that that's true from my experience. It does test. me when I go through one of those what we call AFGOs, which is another effing growth experience, growth opportunity. I try to remind myself, okay, now there's some possibility of learning something of value in this. I'm not always able to get to that right away. Sometimes it might take me a few seconds or minutes or years to get to that point. But I eventually try to get to a point where I can ask myself the question, okay, so what is it that is here for me to learn? What is it that what's my takeaway from this experience? Because it may not be the last time I have something like this happen. And if I can learn something from it, I can minimize the frequency with which these kinds of experiences come up. Maybe not totally eliminate them, but at least minimize the frequency, and also minimize the damage that it does while I'm having this wonderful learning opportunity. And minimize the amount of time it takes me to get out of it. So I believe that it is true that ordeals do test you. But beyond that, what I think they do is they strengthen you too. Mm-hmm. They have the potential to strengthen us. And what's going to determine whether it's simply a test of our endurance or capability, or whether it's something that we can actually use to enhance and develop ourselves in ways that we otherwise may not have been challenged to do so. So not only are relationships, is it inevitable for relationships to have challenges and ordeals, but it's necessary. And it's necessary because most of us do not come into relationships, particularly committed partnerships, fully formed, mm-hmm. fully developed. It's really a matter of learning on the job. If we're fortunate, we come in with some good potential and some skills that maybe have been already developed to some degree. But for most of us, there's more that we can do and need to do to develop certain qualities within ourselves that enable us to be more competent, more capable, more confident in our ability to manage the inevitable differences that, if they are neglected, will deteriorate into ordeals.
So one of the things that we always try to impress upon people when we teach our classes or see couples in counseling is see how many things you can head off at the pass, if possible, to stay current with the issues of the relationship and not go into denial about them. Don't avoid leaning into the challenge of speaking about them because they have a tendency to accumulate. So if you have some feelings of dissatisfaction or disillusionment or disappointment, to bring it to the attention of your partner, and hopefully in an inviting way. And we always make the distinction between a complaint and criticism. If you stay on the good side of the line where you're just a complaint, that can be an entry point into what you're committed to. It's a thin line to go over to become critical of the other person. So to have some finesse about the way you bring the topic up, to have a softened startup, as John Gottman calls it, to really be the invitation, as Charlie and Linda Bloom call it, to invite them to join you with some kind of introductory remarks like, I really want us to have the best possible relationship that we can have, and I need to bring something up that is upsetting to me. We talk about our own experience, less about what they're doing or not doing, less about what they're saying or not saying, and more about how we're feeling. I'm feeling somewhat disconnected from you because we've been so busy with all these other things that we're doing. Couldn't we take a weekend off this month and go away together? Or I'm feeling disconnected from you. I'd like to have some date night this week. or I'm feeling disconnected from you. Do you have any time today where we could sit and talk with each other? Because I've got so many things on my mind and on my heart. Tell me when the first possible moment is that you could be with me so we could discuss these things. And then, of course, when I do get agreement, then I want to bring them up, not in an accusatory way, no blaming. I want to be really responsible about the way I bring it up. I want to continue the invitation. I think things would work better for me if thus and such was in place. What do you think about that? Can we make an agreement about that? That going forward, we could do something differently than we're doing it right now, whatever it is. And sometimes couples get into really bad trouble because they haven't stayed current with the little things, and the little things start to add up. A little neglect here and there can add up. A little disrespect here and there can add up. Tone of voice, being having a cutting edge on our voice, being accusatory, making threats, all these things can derail our relationship because of the disrespect. And if we catch ourselves red-handed doing things that have harmed the relationship, it is inviting to the other person to come and join us in the repair and the reconstruction if we're responsible. If we say, I am so sorry that I've been neglecting the relationship, or I'm so sorry that I just talked to you with tone in my voice. I'm so sorry. I really want to apologize for how impatient I was being and that I was trying to hurry you. That was out of my own anxiety. I hope you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. And what's even more important than the apology is going forward, this is the correction that I want to put in, because I see that I can do it differently now, and it will really enhance our relationship.
So you see, there's a few things to try to, pitfalls that you might want to be mindful about having when you step into what can feel sometimes like a minefield. And that is, we tend to be more sensitive and more reactive, many of us, when there are incompletions in the relationship. And incompletion is some issue that has come up that hasn't been adequately addressed. So it feels unfinished. Some people call it unfinished business. But when there is stuff that we're still holding onto, or that we're still being affected by, like something that we brought up that was a difficulty that came up between us, and we didn't feel satisfied about the nature of the way in which it was addressed. Didn't feel that it was adequately addressed. So we may be, or our partner may be more sensitive to anything that can sound like a judgment or a criticism, blame, fault finding, anything like that. So we always want to try to be conscious of not speaking in ways that can activate our partner's defensiveness. So in terms of that, one good way to derail a potentially fruitful conversation is to begin with the introduction of the phrase, "We need to talk." That phrase generally doesn't engender a positive association with the person who's on the receiving end of it, because even though the pronoun at the beginning of the sentence is we, the message is you. You got a problem, and I'm here to help you get over it. And if you listen to me, then we'll be okay. So sometimes, those judgments can get manifested show up in the relationship without us even realizing it. So we want to try to minimize any blame, any fault finding, mainly not because it's a bad thing, but just because it's very easy to get defensive when you feel blamed. That's kind of a human trait that most of us have. And the problem with getting defensive is that when we're defensive, it becomes really difficult to hear what the other person is saying to me, because I'm busy defending myself. I'm busy in my own mind invalidating the judgment that I just felt I got. And when my focus is on protecting myself from further judgment, it's really difficult for me to hear the message. Mm-hmm. So we want to try to minimize that. It's going to happen anyway sometimes. And if you're in the receiving end of something like that, and somebody's speaking to you in a way that is activating your own feeling of defensiveness, and I think we all know what that can feel like. It can show up in a lot of different ways, but the internal feeling is that I don't feel safe. I feel judged. I feel attacked. I feel criticized. I feel blamed. And so when we're feeling that way, our receptors really kind of shut down, and we can't really absorb the message. So one of the things that you can do is to just acknowledge that. Excuse me for a second, but I just need to let you know that, I noticed that I'm really feeling defensive right now. And sometimes we can even make our partner wrong for feeling defensive or for speaking defensively. However, if your partner is feeling defensive, or if they're acting defensively, rather than accusing them of being defensive, they're like, "You're being defensive." Yeah, I am. You may want to take a look and check in and see what, if anything, you may be doing or saying, or how you might be expressing yourself that could be activating their defensiveness. And just speaking from your experience, I'm feeling this, I'm experiencing this, I'm needing this, is a way to kind of soothe your partner's feeling of being judged or criticized or blamed.
So what Charlie's talking about is sweetening up the context, making it safer, because sometimes these conversations that really need to happen can go a little south for a while. And that's part of the getting off the road and coming back on the road. And I just want to say hi to Amanda. I'm glad that you tuned in. And I want to give you opportunity to consider about how you might be able to head off some trouble at the pass. Charlie's talking about creating a safe space. And when it starts to feel a little edgy and unsafe about how to create the safety again, maybe the openness in the communication narrows, and how to open it up again by sharing from our own experience, and particularly asking. And I encourage people to give an engraved invitation. If there's any way that I'm speaking to you that's putting you off, I want you to help me. Could you give me some feedback? If you feel like I'm rushing, or I'm talking too long, or I'm jumping from topic to topic and I'm losing you, I'm bringing too many subjects, and all of these are good grist for the mill for how to put the correction in and to repair in the moment. And if you have agreement from your partner that you maybe are going to have some difficult and uncomfortable moments to get to the other side of really understanding and creating a new kind of an agreement, that is a good contract to make. I want to offer you a little exercise. We sometimes do this with couples when we see them in counseling. We sometimes do this, often we do it in our relationship classes, where we say, use the scale of 0 to 10. 0 is, I just couldn't be more unhappy. I'm so disillusioned. I'm so disappointed. I'm so frustrated. And 10 is, I'm so happy with this relationship. I could jump for joy and sing a hallelujah chorus. Usually people are somewhere, they're not down around 0, and they may be not at 10 either. But when you have agreement to speak truth with each other about where you are on that continuum, that you can say, I'm really only about a 6 or a 7 in this relationship, or maybe I'm an 8 or a 9. And this is why I'm giving it the credit that it deserves, that it's not down in the small numbers, but this is why I'm not at a 10 in terms of experiencing well-being in our relationship. I feel like we need more of this and that, or we need less of this and that, or we need to make the relationship more of a priority, or there's some issues that have been really upsetting me for a while and we need to address them. Every single week we need to have a meeting about it until I feel like we're making headway with it. This is worrying me or that. And that this is going to be the scale that's going to be the indicator for how to put the corrections in, how to make the repairs, to take the relationship up to the thrive zone if it's sunken down some.
Right. So I guess we would say that the bottom line here is that not if, but when you hit those rough spots, the way to prevent them from deteriorating into ordeals is to intervene at an early stage. In other words, the sooner you acknowledge to yourself and your partner that, whoa, we got a problem here. And the pronoun is always we, as opposed to you, even though we might be thinking in terms of, if you weren't doing this, or if you would only say this, or something about that other person, we may be thinking that. But the challenge is to really recontextualize our view of it. This is a relationship issue. This is something that was co-created by both of us. And even though it's always much easier to recognize how the other person played a part in the breakdown than it is ourselves. But just to trust and to know that every breakdown has had two contributors. That doesn't mean it's 50-50. That doesn't mean that we've equally contributed to it. That doesn't mean that one person has the power alone to fix it. Mm-hmm. It means that we both have to take a look at how we are accountable for having participated in this, such that this is where we are right now. And that we're, until we can do that, until we can really take that level of responsibility and acknowledge that it's not just her, it's not just him, and it's not just me, but we have both, in ways that may not always be apparent, contributed to the situation that we're in now. Until we can see that, we don't really have the authority or the power to take it someplace else. The only thing that it makes sense to do when you're convinced that it's all the other person is to try to get them to change, because they're the ones who messed it up in the first place.
Yeah, how well does that work?
Yeah.
Trying to get them to change just complicates the problem that's already there. By rising up to a higher level of responsibility and looking for the portion that is our own, taking responsibility for the part that we played in it, being sincerely apologetic, saying what we've learned from it, and going forward what our partner can count on from us is really helpful. And also making amends if necessary. Absolutely. Which could include words, could include an apology, could include an acknowledgement of what I might have done, could include forgiving the other person, could include asking for forgiveness. All these things are factors. And how I feel going forward, I would like to make it up to you is profound repair. But do you see that it all begins with believing that is repairable? So you have to tune into your own mind that may be full of hopeless thoughts, resignation, and despair, and work with your own mind first to believe that it's possible. And maybe you have to initiate the conversation. Maybe you have 50 conversations about it. But keep incrementally moving forward. Maybe you're going to need to get some help, maybe some professional help, maybe, read the books, go to the workshops, but that even very serious breakdowns, broken agreements, even betrayals, but certainly the small and the medium-sized one, they're repairable if there's a will to do it, if both people are taking responsibility, and you stay in dialogue about it with an intention to do the repair. Because it is inevitable, if you're in relationship long enough, there's going to be some kind of breakdown, and those breakdowns sometimes lead to breakups that are unnecessary. They can lead to breakthroughs if both people really get to work.
And breakthrough means that on the other side of the breakdown, when you do get through it, you have a stronger and a more sustainable and a more fulfilling relationship than you had before the breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this has been helpful for you to consider the next time you have a growth opportunity. And speaking of that, in regard to dealing with ordeals, if you haven't already gotten a copy of our new book, get it, because that book is all about what we've talked about today, and it illuminates many of the very creative breakdowns that we managed to create over a very difficult 10-year period of ordeals, and how we managed to not only survive them, but to come through on the other side stronger at the broken places.
Mm-hmm.
So check it out. And next week, we're going to be talking about the key to building trust. And if you want to know what that is, tune in, same time next week.
See you then. All the
Adios.
best. Okay. So, end.